if there's something that strikes me as being magical or metaphysical or strong human emotions involved, that strikes a chord.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I try to use that as sort of the germ. How can I convey, let's say, this strong emotional chord?
Emotion.
How can I tell a story or do a trick that represents the love between a man and a woman that
Mm-hmm.
lasts beyond the grave
Mm-hmm.
or uh, beyond all odds, and they still come together? Or I look at people and try to figure out what matters to them.
So fantastic. We have something very special here coming up just in time for Halloween. Just to get people up to speed in regards to what we're going to be watching, this is The Process. It's episode 13. And for people who aren't familiar with the process, basically we delve into the conscious or subconscious steps that people, very creative people, such as our the next guest, go through to be able to producing their work. So to run through these steps, basically step one for people would be inspiration, what they do on a day-to-day regular to be able to keep percolating those ideas. Step two would be incubation. How do people actually set aside some time to be able to expand on these ideas? Step three would be illumination or that eureka moment. How is that experience? Is that more something that happens during the evening? When that happens, you have to stop everything in your day and you just focus on that. Step four would be exploration. How you decide to expand even more on this idea. Do you want to share it with other creators? You rather just keep this to yourself? And then finally, step five, implementation. So do you want this idea to have a life of its own, to decide to maybe market it and try to gain revenue from this or share with other people? Some people, for them, the eureka moment, just being able to solve the puzzle, that's enough for them. But other people, they want to go all the way and do that. So these would be the 5 steps of the process. And no one better right now to delve into the process in this Halloween time than Mr. Terry Tyson. Hello, Mr. Terry.
Hello, Stéphane. How are you, sir?
Very good, very good, very military-like. I love it. So we were already chatting, and we said that we're going to keep government and politics out of this. I already feel the pressure of saluting my prime minister here.
How about like that?
Yeah, that's great too. Yes, for sure. So for people who wouldn't be familiar with you, already have a fantastic setting in your background. I was privileged enough to be able to be introduced to this virtually. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of creativity that you explore on the regular.
Okay. Gosh, it's not unlike other magicians. You start out as a child with the magic kit, or you see something on television. I am old enough to have seen original broadcasts.
Wise enough.
Yeah, wise enough. That's it. But I would watch magic specials on television, especially with Chuck Jones was one of them. He was in Los Angeles, a cartoon host, and he would do magic in between the cartoons. And of course, Mark Wilson, when he had his program with Nani and the whole bit. And that inspired me. And I then joined a magic club around, I would say, 19 years old, and it was a little bit in the hinterlands. I wasn't near a mecca of magic at the time. So a lot of it came from books and just interacting with the small group that we met with. But I was fortunate enough to have an elderly gentleman by the name of Doc Monty
Okay.
cross my path. And Doc was, to be honest with you, a con man. He was probably 3 steps ahead of the sheriff at any given time. And I'm sure he saw some time behind iron bars. But he did some mentalism for the group, and it captivated me. And I walked up to him and I said, "Where do I learn this?" And he said, "Well, before I give you any information about how I did stuff, I want you to recreate what I did."
Before him
Uh,
teaching you?
Before he started teaching me, he says, "I want you to recreate what I did to your best ability."
Yes.
The next month I came back, I did a reasonable facsimile of what he did for the group. And he understood. He goes, "Yeah, I think you've got it." And then he began to teach me some
Okay.
things and gave me my first book of Corinda,
Hmm.
13 Steps.
Yes.
And I devoured it.
Oh, yeah.
And since then, I've actually given that book to other young mentalists or youngsters that are interested in it. And I've had to go buy a second copy. But I wanted to gift this to somebody else and pass on a bit of the legacy. I never knew Doc's real name.
Well, I was going to say
Uh,
that his name is, for you're saying someone who's a gambler and a cheat, and it sounds like a fictitious name, especially with the Monty. And just a really really quick parallel is that in reading books, I don't know if there's a timeline, like a consensus between people who are in devious activities who tend to go towards mentalism, con man, like confidence man, works, or sleight of hand. There seems to be a path. Like, I don't know if it's more common than we think, or
yeah, I don't know either. That's a good question to ask and maybe research. And during that time, I saw Kreskin on television, and this just fueled all of that. And started doing some shows, and I was in my early 20s at the time, and I started writing for Bascom Jones Magic magazine or biweekly newsletter. And Bascom was the first one to ever publish anything that I wrote. And that opened up multiple doors. I got to meet a young Max Maven,
hmm.
uh, Abrams, got to be good friends again with Bascom. He lived about an hour away from where I lived and would meet with him on I don't know, every couple of months.
Hmm.
We'd have coffee. We would have coffee down in Laguna Beach where he lived at the time and started performing more. And then on this really strange sort of serendipitous event, I got a phone call from a fellow magician in the club that I was belonging to at that time. And he had heard that I had just purchased one of those old timey Texas Instruments home computers. You remember? I don't know if you
Yes.
remember them or not, but they put the cartridge in. You could play games. You could do simple word processing. And I bought it. It was the first computer I ever bought. And he knew that I had bought this and set it up. And he says, "I've got a friend who just bought the same computer and he's having problems putting it together." I said, "Do you mind helping him out?" And I said, "Sure. Where are you guys at?" And he goes, "We're only about 4 blocks away." And his name is Harry Blackstone Jr. And so, uh, so I just dropped everything, came out, set it up. It was stupid easy to do it. But, at that time, we're all very ignorant of how electronics work and how to set up even a television set. And did that for him. And he was very standoffish at first. And his wife, Gay, was very sweet. And she goes, "Well, would you like to stay for dinner?" And I said, "Well, that'd be wonderful." And we started talking. And eventually, Harry opened up and he knew that I wasn't trying to um, be the fanboy and ask all about him. I was interested in him and his family, as well as he shared a few stories about his father. And he asked me, he said, well, would you like to, what can I pay you? And I said, oh, nothing. This is fine. I live just down the street. And he said, well, come back here. And we went into his little magic room, and he lived in a very, I mean, he was a superstar, but it was a very humble home. It was just a track home in Redlands, California. And he gave me a jumbo-sized card box. And he goes, this belonged to my father. And I'm sure you can do something with it. And I said, I can. And so he saw me perform, and then I got to open for him doing mentalism. I would say half a dozen local shows or shows in Southern California.
You were
And
how old by this time?
by this time, I was probably in my early to mid 20s.
Okay.
And got into the Magic Castle. As a result of going to the Magic Castle, I got to meet Orson Welles,
Wow.
and I got drunk with Orson Welles, and we corresponded for a while, because you try to match that man drink for drink, and you just might as well give up. There was no. So, but and it was funny when we sat down to talk. He says, "I just have a couple of rules. Number one, I'm here to talk about magic. I'm not going to talk about movies or my ex-wives." I said, "It's fine." So we talked about magic. And I was actually there to meet some friends. And they passed by and said, I said, "What's going on?" I'm here talking to the big guy, you know. So, but anyway, so that led to becoming a part of the Delta Group, which was Max Abrams' office, but also the Elders, which was in Southern California and what they call the Valley.
Okay.
And that's where I met Leo Koska, and others, E. Raven Carlisle, and others who focused primarily on, at that time, bizarre magic and seance. And Robin DeWitt, who was Cardor, and a lot of the old-timer guys will recognize some of these names. And I think that myself and Leo Koska are the only surviving members of that original core group. The group has continued. There's new members, and they're doing very well. But that early group, I think we're the last two, because we were both pretty young, and now we're much older, to say the least. But Leo was the resident medium at the Magic Castle, along with E. Raymond Carlisle or Ed Fowler, and some others that belonged to the group. And as a result of that, I got to see a seance that Max Maven put on. He called it the Aleister Crowley seance, and it was and it was just done in a conference room at one of the members' his office, and I got to see that. So it provided me a lot of opportunities to interact with these folks and learn early on. And Stéphane, what happened, and this is telling a little bit about myself, is that I started having a really big ego at the time. And and I did not like the person I was becoming. I was still pretty immature, and I was getting some notice, and it resulted in a failed relationship. And I sort of woke up and I said, I need to walk away from magic for a while.
Okay.
And become a better human. And frankly, between you and me, I wish more magicians would do that.
But when you said that you had that realization, not that I don't want to break your train of thought, was that just globally you outside of magic, or you just in magic, not having like that positive attitude?
I think both of those things.
Okay.
It reflected in the way I performed. It reflected in my relationships with people, and I sort of had this this come to Jesus moment where the light bulb went off, and I said, I don't like this guy that I've become.
Do you
And so I
remember
had
the
to get my,
triggering moment that got you to think that?
I think it was when the relationship failed.
Okay.
And my partner at the time, she told me what was going on, and I listened,
Yeah.
and I was very close I'm very close to my brother, and he sort of told me the same thing.
Mm.
And so I just took the time to mature.
Yes.
And there was a gap there in my performing and my creation. And then I had the opportunity to do a keynote address at a trade conference, and they wanted me to do some magic because they knew I did a little bit of magic just playing around, and that reintroduced me back into performing, and that was about 20 years ago.
Mm.
So I would say there was like a 7 to 10 year period where I gave it up. I gave away all my books except for a handful.
Yes.
Stéphane, I had all of the original Color Series books by, at that time, Phil Goldstein. They were all signed. And I gave those to a magic club in San Diego. I said, share this. And I think just the shedding of all
Yeah.
of that really helped me.
But
It
just
really
if I could put a commentary to that, is that I find that that's a sign of it's mature to be able to do that. And as like you just had started to say, is that we would wish that to be more common amongst certain people. But it's unfortunate that I think, like, again, it took a loss or a break to be able to have that realization. So human nature, unfortunately, we're a little bit like that, where we need to kind of hit something to be able to wake up. But I can relate to that completely.
good, good. So, and I started meditating,
Mhm.
uh, which also helped me quite a bit. And just trying to be the best human I
Yes.
can, and then maybe be the best magician that I can
Mhm.
after that. But being a good person is number one, and being supportive and being caring and loving and so, like I say, supportive to people. And I practice that when I do my shows, being very supportive and empowering.
I could
That's
definitely see that how it could change your way of performance, because when it's no longer you, I could just see, like, just even before we were just like discussing, you're very generous in your sharing. So to have, I could just imagine that being more transmitted through your performing, because that essence, I could just see it, like, in the few times that we're discussing.
Yeah. We were talking, there was a side conversation with a couple of friends, and one guy was kind of upset at me for doing X by supporting different other creators and events. And it was David Parr who came to my defense. He said, "Guy, listen, Terry's just a hippie. He loves everybody, and he wants to be loved by everybody, and he wants to help people, and that's who Terry is." And I sometimes joke with David. I say, "I'm just a hippie, bro. I'm just a hippie. That's all I am now."
Yeah. No.
But
Great
yeah,
perspective.
but we got off topic, I guess, a little bit, and
Oh
I
no, not at
apologize.
all. I mean, that's it's great because it gives an insight even for me, because I'm very new to this whole world of like magic, and it's like, and there's threads that like over the time that doing these interviews that I'm starting to realize, and that's what I was hoping that would happen, is that over time, when you have a little bit more volumes, you could see that there's a thread that starts to kind of rise, and a lot of it has to do with being able to transmit our personality first and the effect second, you know
Yes,
and
yes,
I find
that
it,
was true.
yeah, and it's hard to convey that in today's world, because everything is so fast that we don't want to have the time to listen to someone, or even take the time to lay the table
Yeah,
and then present the thing and exchange, and that it just so happens that there's a coincidence,
yeah. So, in any event, that's sort of my backstory, and I started getting into seance probably in the late 70s. And that coincided with the publication of Seance magazine that
Mm.
came out in the 80s. And I contributed to that quite a bit and was very honored to be asked to do that. Also, what was interesting about that whole exercise with Scott Davis, who was the publisher and the editor, was that he had a deadline for
Mhm,
every issue.
mhm.
And as a contributor to his magazine, for lack of a better term, is now has become a journal of early seance work, that it forced me to concentrate and create.
Mhm.
When you have a deadline, that helps. When you have a
Yes.
show coming up, I said, I want to do X, but I don't know how to get there. So that is one of the things that really helps me, is to have a deadline or have a goal with a
Yeah.
date on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It forces you
And
to channel that you have a yeah, you have a release date, so you have to be able to put your energies and get that thing done.
right. So that's part of my creative process, is to actually have some kind of goal in mind with a time attached to it.
Yes, like an
And
event.
yes,
Yeah.
and what will happen with that is that I'll come up with one version
Yes.
that works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then after working with it for a while, to look at it again,
Mhm.
simplify it, or make it more of an experience for the audience than it is in its current state. And it eventually evolves. We were talking earlier about an effect that I started working on in 2017,
Yes.
pardon me. And it has gone through 4 incarnations until its current state, and I'll be performing this current version in about 2 weeks.
Mhm, mhm.
And I'm fortunate enough to be performing for a trade association, and it's going to be at Disneyland. And I'm very excited about the gig. And I like this group of people too, and they like me. I worked for them about 5 years ago, and they called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to help us?" And I said, "Sure, that'd be wonderful." I did not seek them out at all.
The
So
perfect
that
hippie
was,
situation.
yeah. And I'm using the show that I did at Birdie's in North Little Rock, and then changing it a bit for the mentalism show. And my keynote is something that I did again in 2017, and I'm reworking that one to make it, I think, more effective and more beneficial to the people that are going to be present listening to my message. And it's about the magic in leadership.
Imagine.
And that's one of the talks I do for keynotes. I do keynotes for observational skills. It's called the Rashomon effect. And
Mhm.
the idea is that different people can see the same thing and see different things. And in magic is a perfect metaphor for all of that.
Yes.
I also do one, like I say, the magic and leadership, uh, how to influence culture in an organization so that it improves the culture for everybody involved, not just the boss, but also the guys on the shop floor, and how to work that into. And I use magic to illustrate message points. Communication skills. That's a workshop that I do, and a few others. But I'm known for putting magic into my keynotes, and that's not a new thing. I know a lot of guys do that, but I try to make it effective. There is a keynote speaker out there, and he's got a good message. He's got good magic, but it's really strange, Stefan, because he'll start with his message, then he'll stop, do a magic trick, and then move on. And I thought,
Mhm.
it's not connected. What?
Do not, yeah.
It drives me crazy, because it's easy to use magic as a metaphor, and that's what I try to do. But again, a lot of people do it. I have my own style, my own message, and I invite magicians who like to do public speaking to think about that. And if they've worked in the corporate world, they understand the issues that are important to a company, or even if it's just a single operation, like a single plant,
Yep.
not the whole corporation, but a single plant that produces widgets or whatever, and talk to them and help them out. So yeah, I love doing it, and of course that's separate from the mentalism show and from the seance work. It's a whole
I
different
mean, it's
silo.
crazy busy. It's like nonstop working.
Well, you know, it's funny. I retired about 7 years ago, and my wife and I, in addition to doing a lot of travel, international travel, we're busier than we could. You know, I it's so we're so busy, but it's good work. It is fulfilling work, and I can go to work in shorts that I'm wearing now and an Aloha shirt,
It's
and of course,
basically, I feel like you found your. Have you ever heard of Ikigai?
yeah,
So for people who don't know, Ikigai is basically it's a combination of four things. So something that you love, something that you're good at because it's not because you love it that you're good at, something that makes money, and something that people need. So you seem to have found like that perfect
right.
combination, yeah.
Well,
So
what's nice too, Stefan, that because I am retired, I'm only working. I call myself the lazy semi-professional in that in that I don't have to use the money to put beans on the table.
mhm.
It is extra income. And that's a really sweet position to be in because at one time, you know, professionals, they are constantly working, getting the next gig. You know, 20% is doing the performance and it's 80% marketing
Mhm.
and calling potential clients and all of that. It's a very daunting process and it's a very busy and tiring process. So I admire any magician who's doing this full time and actually paying rent. That it's remarkable.
It is very difficult.
And and you also think about the big names. We could probably count them on one, maybe two hands that are making a lot of money.
Mhm.
Most of the magicians, professional magicians that we know, they're making a modest living, but they love doing it.
It's
And
for the
it's and
passion.
I use the analogy like musicians, guys that play in a band or play an instrument. It's hard to make a living at that because you may not ever hit the big time, but you can't help but do it. I
Mhm.
mean, there's something in you that drives you to create and to play and to perform. And so I admire I love live music. So when we go to a venue and watch live music, I have a lot of compassion for these guys because they're busting their ass to get to the next gig and to get the next booking and all of that. It's a hard life, but I admire it. I
But
just
that's the
admire those
thing. I think that
guys.
when people strive to be like bring creativity and follow their passions in their lives, at a certain point, um, the value of your lifestyle and what you're doing, it surpasses like financial gain. You know.
Yep.
But already,
Yep.
like we started talking about like the process and stuff like that. So if we get started, like basically step one, inspiration. So just like you how do you keep that how do you fuel the inspiration, let's say on your day to day, because like we see there's objects and everything like that, and you do travel and stuff, like what is it, like do you specifically set yourself out on a course to keep that like always on a certain level, or is that just natural? You're curious by nature, so you're always finding, how do you go about that?
I think it's somewhat natural. Um, I'm a very good observer, and I try to take things in that I look at and I focus in and take it all in what I'm seeing. And if there's something that strikes me as being magical or metaphysical or strong human emotions involved, that strikes a chord.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I try to use that as sort of the germ. How can I convey, let's say, this strong emotional chord?
Emotion.
How can I tell a story or do a trick that represents the love between a man and a woman that
Mm-hmm.
lasts beyond the grave,
Mm-hmm.
or beyond all odds, and they still come together. Or I look at people and try to figure out what matters to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then build something on that. So the inspiration can come from watching a movie, taking a walk in nature, one of my favorite things to do, or through travel and hearing stories about the history of a place. I like literature, so the literary foundations are strong. Poetry is strong. I use poetry even in my mentalism act, I use poetry. And all of that sort of feeds into a germ of an idea.
Yeah.
Or I'll be honest with you, I will see a magician do something
Yeah.
that's like, it's really,
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
good. And I get what he's getting at, or he or she is getting at. And how do I build on that to create something that is mine? And so I
Yeah.
use magicians and their performances as inspiration sometimes. And also, I will look at, and you and I talked about this just briefly, and I will see something that's created, and let's say that the method involves electronics or it's very, very complicated, and I am a terrible magician. My card magic is terrible. So how do I reproduce that, or how can I get the same end point,
Yeah.
which is what is the point of the seance? For instance, when I teach my seance classes, I, the first thing you have to come to terms with, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
And so I use that as sort of the first steps in creating something new. And I enjoy the inspiration moments. Often it will come maybe at the aha moment, which we will get into, I'm sure, but often that will come at the end of a meditation process, or just as I'm about to fall asleep. And
See,
I'll
that's
wake up in the morning and
already
I'm like,
in phase two, basically the exploration. Because, like, so
yep,
basically, what I'm getting is that yes, you're naturally like an inspired person, and because you're creative, you tend to be very curious, and that brought me to a question. First of all, is um, you seem to like more like psychic and spirit like oriented magic. Is there a reason why more particularly that than something else?
I think that part of it harkens back to, I think David Parr gave a similar answer. We liked scary movies.
Okay, yeah.
I like scary stories. So I want to tap into that a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I look at nature, when I look at the magic that takes place in nature,
Yeah.
say how can I reproduce that in an interesting way, or how do I create the metaphor for that magical event? I love urban legends. I
Hmm.
love ghost stories, and I've even created my own urban legends,
Yeah.
just completely, just from scratch.
And
And uh, I alluded to that when I did the Alakazam um, talk,
Paranormal.
and yeah, the paramagical connections. And I created an urban legend for the area in which we now live,
Mhm.
and using some historical touchstones to create basically a love story. I you know, I think
You're
that's
a romantic.
I am a romantic. Just ask my wife. I am a
Yeah, Suzanne.
romantic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But
And
see, with all these ideas when they come in, how do you keep like a log of them? How do you journal them? Like, how do you go about that? Ah,
I'm a lover of index cards,
there you go.
and I'll have a stack of index cards right here at my fingertips. I'll just write something down, and often I'll have one by the end table in the living room, or on the
Yeah, yeah.
side table in the bedroom.
They're planted. They're just ready and waiting. And see, it's
Yeah.
interesting because in the conversation that when I did the interview with David, because David Parr was gracious enough to be on the thing, and he's a
Yeah.
common friend, and we were just talking about in the process writing it down. And
Yep.
how that is for certain people, me, I feel this. It's the first step from actually taking something that is like it non-existent, and then it goes into reality.
Yes, it becomes a real thing.
Yes, it becomes something. You
Yeah,
think you're only writing a word or a name or an idea. It's not. It's not. It's really not that. You're actually bringing something that didn't exist, and then from there it could grow. So I like that practice of being able to write down when you have it.
yeah. And I keep a travel journal when we travel. I also take photographs and
Mm-hmm.
make a note on it so
Mm-hmm.
that it becomes real. The idea also of writing something down, Stefan, maybe this happens with you too. As I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
a new thought comes in. It just sort of
It's like the
enters.
vessel. It's like you open the
Yeah,
window.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
halfway through my first sentence, I've got two more lines that come to me. Um, and it's like, okay, now it's beginning to come. It's from like writing poetry. When you write poetry, you might start out with just a couple of lines,
Mhm.
a verse, and then it starts to flow, and
Yeah.
then walk away from it and come back to it.
Yes.
Uh, then I will transfer that to my written notes to the screen and put it
Okay.
in a
Yeah. Yeah.
Word document.
Yeah.
And so I can look at it and I don't have to reinterpret what I wrote. And often when I'm doing that, the same thing happens. It
Yes.
begins to evolve and morph right as I'm typing it. And so I have to write it down first
See,
and
I had
instead of
that
making the
conversation
thing.
with a friend yesterday in regards to that because I find that there's a duality that happens when we're in that state. It's like a flow state because there's a lot of information that's coming in, right? And sometimes when we want to stay on the rails of our initial idea, but sometimes the new information that came in became it's a branch. And if you're not
Yep.
careful, you'll end up further on that branch than the actual tree. So it's hard, I
Right.
find, to keep the guardrails right.
And also I think it's nice to go off the rails because, for instance, the effect that I was speaking about starting in 2017, my initial method was bulky. Yeah, it sort of worked, but I wasn't really happy. And then it just occurred to me, and it involved
Mm-hmm.
a file folder. And the first thing I realized, I got to get rid of that stupid file. It's in the way. How do I get to this point without the thing that's blocking me? And I just tossed it and started working from that point forward. And then it all started flowing together really quickly. It really
So,
did.
see what happened, and that was something I was going to ask you. Do you find that, let's say, when you're working on an idea, that you're more prolific when you give yourself like boundaries? Because if it's too open, there's too much. But if you say it has to be black and white, it has to be this size, and it can't be this and this, you're giving yourself self constraints that forces you to come up with something that's brilliant. Like you seem
Yeah,
to give yourself constraints, like it has to be like this. Then it's not. We'll start it off. We'll start it off. It's bulky. It's this and that. But at least it's rolling.
right. And it has to have this endpoint. Um, so I may toss the initial guardrails, but I put them back on so I can get to my endpoint
Yeah.
because I still want it to be this at the end.
Hmm.
It's sort of like Michelangelo when he's creating David, the statue. He just gets rid of every piece that does
Yes.
not look like David.
Yeah. Hmm. It's
You
the
know,
essence.
the essence. Yeah. But
So, oh, go
what's
ahead.
really, what's really fortunate and is that I have found a very supportive community of
Hmm.
like-minded individuals
Yeah, that's important.
that that have also checked their egos at the door, and they are there. Each of them they are there to help. Each of these people that I associate with have certain talents, and
Hmm.
they have certain things that there are specialties, and it really is like having a brain trust.
Yes.
And I've found these people. I trust them, and they're very creative as well. So they have helped me a great deal, and I've been fortunate. And so if you can find a community, whether it's 3 people or 50 people that you can trust, that
Hmm.
they have no hidden agendas, no egos, they are there just for the creative process, man, just adopt them as your tribe and bring them in. And then you'll be able to recognize then input that does not match the vibe of the tribe. And
Hmm.
it's maybe worth considering, but it's like, nope, this is not where I want to be. So I'll discount that. Appreciate their input, because I hopefully they're giving that input from a good place. Excuse me. And and I appreciate that, but then I have to admit I do go back to my core group of people that I love and respect and really need in my life.
Well, would that be part of actually phase two, which is exploration? So you right
Yeah.
away in the exploration part, you already bounce off of other people, and you're not like,
Yep.
not to say afraid, but because that falls into ego a little bit. Or we were just mentioning before our conversation is that sometimes we want to just try and prove to ourselves and others, sometimes for certain reasons. Sometimes it's good to want to like show to off to others, but we want to show to others that we're able to do it alone. But then it kind of blocks the growth a little bit.
Yeah. Again, it has to do with who those people are.
Exactly.
Uh, and in being, I guess, mature enough and wise enough, and fortunately I've got those years behind me to recognize the differences. Um, and but I'll share something or even just describe it
Hmm.
to this core group that I've got, and they will start contemplating it. And because they come from different facets, well,
Yes.
have you thought about this? And it's not like their idea is the best one. They're just trying to feed your thought process. It's almost like having, in my case, I've got 6 gurus that
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
can all, I could all meditate with, and
And
they're
everyone has
smart.
their own particular perspective that they bring to the table.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And they don't mind if I just discount it out of hand. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, it's no big deal. And then they will share something with us, with the other members of this group. And it's unfortunate to have that. And I've taken some of their ideas, and other times like, nah, it's not working for me, you know. Um, but anyway, so I do like to share after it's germinated and it's at least a seedling that's coming
Okay.
up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And
yeah,
so just in that exploration part, like we just discussed that you're currently retired, but well, we'll call it retired, like 35
yeah,
hours a day retired now. But
yeah.
um, basically, do you set aside time for these, like, working on a project, or it's just like when it comes, it comes? Basically, I'm always working because that's my lifestyle. I'm a creative, so or do you need to set aside? Okay, no, it's 9 to 5, and
Yeah, I do set aside time, but I don't let it dominate my time with my wife Susan.
yes.
We do have this sort of, I do say in the morning we'll have breakfast. I'm the cook in the family.
Mm.
Um, so I'll make breakfast, or have breakfast together, and then we'll go up to our respective studios. She's got her art and craft studio. I've got my magic studio and my workshop area that's right here. Um, and may work on a project or just read or do something. So I do sort of kind of like treat it like a job.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't have to go Monday through Friday. It might be every other day when we've got other things to do. Um, so I do like a little bit of that structure where, okay, in the studio, I'm going to do something, whether it's, um, for instance, take lessons online. And I'm a big fan of Luke Germain, and I'll watch
Mhm.
his stuff, or I'll watch Jamie Dawes, his stuff, or do other research on an idea and make my notes. And then, but I also like to shut it down because we have a practice that between 6 and 6:30, everything gets shut down and sort of clear the decks, and we go down and we sit in our lounge and we have a beverage and then download to one another, and that keeps us connected. And that's the most important connection I've got in my life is with Susan. So that helps. And so a little semi-structured, I think, is the best way to do it. And then if I got a project, for instance, I've got this show that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll definitely set aside some time, but I also clear it with her.
Yeah,
Say,
yeah, yeah.
so we, like, okay, what's on our calendar for the next 3 days? And she'll say, I've got this, got that. We got to do this. Okay, so sweetie, I'm going to work on the show from this time to this time. We'll have lunch and we'll come back. And so it is it's an agreed upon schedule, I suppose. And she publishes a calendar. Do I have one of our calendars up here? And I put them all away. But we have the next 3 months sort of blocked out about
Yeah.
what's on our schedule, including travel, including classes, including meeting with friends. Because one of the other things that happens, Stefan, is like last night, I was telling her, I say, I've got a delivery coming on Thursday. I don't know when that is. She goes, honey, that's tomorrow. It's one of the things that happens when you retire. You don't know what the goddamn day of the week it is. Because the weekends are meaningless as far as, oh, it's Friday. We're
Yeah.
off tomorrow
It's
and the
always
next day.
Friday.
No, it's always Friday, or it's
Yeah.
always yeah. So oh yeah. And I was talking to my brother on the phone. He has the same problem. He's retired as well. And I'm going to go out to visit him. And he said, now, what day is that? That's the 29th. And he goes, what day of the week is that? I said, I don't know. It doesn't say that on my phone. I got to look at my watch. I mean, I got to look at my phone because it doesn't show up on my watch. And we both laugh. So that's kind of freeing also, because if we have nothing planned for the weekend, we will use that to do our respective things in our studios, and
And you
just
seem to be
sometimes
more
just pop.
performance driven when there's a deadline.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. That helps. It helps me, and that's probably harkening back to my corporate days where there were deadlines. So that does help.
Yeah, I find
And
for me too. Either like it's self-imposed, like you say, I'm gonna have a show this date. I'm preparing, so it gives you an objective.
yep, yep, it really does help me, and it keeps me organized because I can really blow off a lot of time without any purpose whatsoever, just by scrolling through my phone. And boy, those things are dangerous to
For sure. But is
creativity.
there multiple like unfinished projects like moving along that you get
And
to?
each
Yeah.
one,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and each one has its own separate document or
Yeah.
note cards that are clipped together,
How
and
many?
that
Just
helps.
out of curiosity, how many like at any given time rolling?
I would say on average three, and
Yeah.
sometimes as many as seven.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that's happening, though, is that I'm getting a lot of requests to be a consultant to other magicians.
Uh, you're lucky. I'd
And
love to. Yeah, it's fun. That no.
yeah, and I respond very quickly. If somebody's having an issue with a particular problem, doing the red light seance, for instance, which I've been doing now for centuries, it seems, and I
Yeah.
will give them guidance. I'll send them some documents, and I find that by also breaking away from the project and helping somebody else, I feel good about that, and makes me continue on. And so that's happening a lot more and more. And I think that's because of my years in doing this, that I've become like a senior statesman for some kinds of magic. And I just, and I appreciate people reaching out. I feel honored that they would actually ask for my input. So I give my time to the
It's much
community in that
easier. I
regard.
mean, in my case, I could say I was surprised at how approachable you were. Because a lot of people were referenced Stefan. You should maybe reach out to Terry. You seem to have similarities in regards to interests and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I could say again, very generous, very passionate, and sharing and stuff. So, very incredible. Step
But
three.
it helps that you're a nice guy. If you were a
Well,
jerk, I would
listen,
say,
when you have no hair, my friend, you have to compensate with stuff else. So, I'm the
why
cook.
do you think I wear berets? It's to hide
The wisdom.
baldness. Yeah. Oh, that's to keep all the wisdom in. Okay, I'll tell that to my wife and see what she says.
Yeah. The consulate.
But I do enjoy the process of creating magic. I also channel that into other creative projects such as printmaking
Mhm.
and hand bookbinding.
Yeah.
I like to do that and building a simple prop.
Yeah. But just working with your hand, like physically doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's faster. In fact, I find it getting into the zone is faster when I'm creating something with my hands as opposed to just with my head and the keyboard
Yeah.
or a pen and paper. It
True.
really
It
does.
occupies a dynamic that's different. I need to have that too as well. I like fabricating things. It's fun. It keeps my hands, I don't know, occupied or agile. I don't know exactly what it is, but I kind of like that thing. And it's
Yeah.
weird because sometimes I don't know if you do this. Like, let's say if you're meditating, and sometimes you get the answer to like how to assemble something. Like I see, like actually physically doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I
I
try
find
to
that
be
weird.
mindful. And my practice of mindfulness and the other one that's really, really strong for me, and I think every person on the planet should learn gratitude and mindfulness. And
And it's so
that is
simple.
it is so simple. Even if you're living on the street, there's an opportunity to become grateful for something. And that in turn, I find the universe listens and the universe will provide. At least that's been my experience in this world.
Again, I think we touched on this just in regards to when we were mentioning that you realize with the ego, and it took the situation like a rupture for that. People have to, unfortunately, I don't know what's up with the human nature with that. It takes a loss to be able to recognize the little simple things like, listen, I'm talking to you right now. You know what? First of all, I'm able to talk. Okay. I'm breathing of my own free will. I'm talking to someone that I respect who took the time out of his day. We're not talking about gossip and drama and people and no. We're debating on ideas. That's a beautiful thing. We're able to like exchange for this. We're gonna have memories of this. Something positive will come. Maybe someone will see this video and they'll enjoy that. That is a privilege.
It is. Whenever I'm asked to be on a podcast or specifically asked to lecture or to perform, or even, this sounds silly, but anyway, whenever that happens, I am just blown away that they would be interested in talking to me or listening to me for me to help. I am actually, this is going to sound silly, but I like to make cocktails,
Mm-hmm.
and I have created my own registered cocktails.
Oh
One's
wow!
called there's one's called the Mind Reader. It's very complicated. I won't go into it.
And they serve it at the pendulum bottle.
The Bottle and Pendulum Lounge. That's right. So I had a friend. We were fortunate enough to. Let me go back. I met this fellow and his wife on a cruise ship that I was performing on, and his name was Ken. And I was getting a martini at the bar. He walks up, and it was a gin martini because I think martinis should be made out of gin. But if you want to drink vodka martinis, I have no judgment, but I will probably not drink it. So, oh boy, I'm talking this is maybe too much information. So he came up and goes, "Oh, a man after my own heart." And we started talking, and I said, "Well, why don't you join? My wife is right over here. She's the sommelier in the house. She likes wine and she knows wine." And he said, "Well, my wife will be joining us soon, and my name is Ken, and you'll be able to remember us because her name is Barbie." And we have become lifelong friends with them ever since. And so I like to create cocktails or make nuanced old fashions, for instance.
Mhm.
And they came to visit. He goes, "Sit down." He goes, "Make me one of your old fashions." I was touched. I was honored to do this act of creating for a friend, and he appreciated it. And we had one of my special types of old fashions.
But it brings
And
pleasure sharing what we like
yeah, yeah.
and
And then
seeing someone else enjoy it.
yeah, and then he will discover a new gin, and he'll send me a picture of it. I've got another magician friend actually who is currently on the Queen Mary 2 coming home from about 2 months in Europe, and he'll send me a picture of a new gin, and he said, "Oh, this is really good." So, in addition to creating handmade books, writing poetry, all these other stuff, I also like making cocktails, special cocktails.
Which could be a good segue into step 3, the eureka moment. So let's say you want to make a cocktail and you say, this is the idea of my cocktail, the eureka moment. So what happens? You have to stop everything, regardless of what time it is. You get onto it, and then it's like non-stop channeling until you get on that. Or you say, no, I could write it down. I'll get to it. Like, what happens? And
I
also,
write it
when does that
down.
happen? Is it more like when you meditate or just out of the blue?
Um, the cocktails usually come usually later in the day. I don't want to start making cocktails at 10 o'clock in the morning.
The inspirational morning cocktail.
Yeah, I don't want to start making cocktails after meditation at 10 o'clock in the morning. That would be a bad sign. I'd have to reevaluate my life, Stefan. Uh, but it will come when I'm actually doing the thing. It's not unlike the magic.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the thing,
The zone.
the idea comes in, the aha moment, try this, and then boom,
Yeah.
it will happen. But
How
I
do you
will
feel when
write
it
things
happens?
down. Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I want to tell people about it. Oh, look at this thing I just did. My wife does not drink bourbon, so she'll say, "Well, that's nice. I don't want to drink it." so so I will share that with friends immediately. Take a picture of it. This is the recipe, and then when I'm doing magic, and something like that happens, I will tell her, and she will appreciate it. She may not understand it completely,
Yeah.
but then I will share it with that core group of my tribe,
Yeah.
as I call it.
Yeah.
And
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 get the
then
validation.
sometimes I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't want to share it. I just want to freaking do it
Yeah.
for audience or for people, and then to get that satisfaction. Did it work or did it not? And so it's a little bit like walking the tightrope. It
Yeah.
may work, it may not.
Trial by fire.
And
You have to, yeah.
yeah, I'll take that leap and see if it works.
Pedon
And
Binek says you have to live it to learn it.
that's true.
Yeah.
You really do. And that's one of the things that has helped me is my age has helped me
Yes.
when I have done mentalism, when I do readings, even when I do seance. My age and experience has helped me
Yeah.
to understand how people live, what are the commonalities in our life, what are the touchstones that matter to the greater population. And so I am blessed with being old.
But there's something that
I
resonates
am,
with you, that you seem like it would be hard for you not to share. Like that seems to be
yeah.
something that pulsates with you, that when something happens, like your instinct is that the joy that you get from that is automatically, it's like, I wish someone else could live that too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that actually works in my mentalism performances, in which, and there's a whole number of tricks that are the participant as mind reader. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
some of them are really good, some of them are really bad. So if I can make that into what seems to be an authentic experience and
Mm-hmm.
celebrate their success, I think that's very, very powerful
Oh, for sure.
to an
What a
audience
trick.
member, if nothing else, to the participant.
Yeah.
When they get it, and maybe I help them along the way, but they get the credit. They become the hero
Mhm.
of that story, and if I can give them that experience, yay, that's wonderful. And okay, for instance, I'm doing. How much can we get into describing effects? Do we do we want to stay away from that?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay, so let's talk about fourth dimensional telepathy,
Mhm.
the classic Animan and um, Uncle Bob's approach to what we call 4DT.
Mhm.
And if I can make my reveal something personal to that person,
Yeah.
for even as simple as a name of somebody that they care about, and um, let me see. Maybe no, that's good. I was thinking of another
Mhm.
thing that I've done, but let's go with that. And they've given me a name, and I can tell by the name their
The relationship.
gender, the relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably the age,
Yes.
probably the
Yes.
age. If
Yeah.
it's an old timey
Yes.
name,
Yeah.
it's somebody that's an aunt or
A little bit of the
grandmother.
personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I start talking to them about this person, even not even revealing the name yet,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about how they feel about this person, that makes it a magical moment for them.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It is it's interesting to the audience, just from a basic level. How in the hell did he know that? Um, and but I make it a personal experience, and it's more. And so I give them credit for having this strong emotion about this individual, that it was so strong that I could detect it, as opposed to, I am the master mentalist, I know all, and the
Mm-hmm.
name is Aunt Edith.
Yeah.
But so I think that, and again, my age helps in creating that moment that it is special to that individual and makes it meaningful to them. And in turn, perhaps there's an emotional connection that is created that the audience can also detect.
It's like palpable a
And
little bit.
that's more, yeah. And that's a little bit, that sort of describes how I will do something with a reveal. Also, there's other kinds of reveals we don't need to get into, but just for a name, a person's name is special.
Would you
And I
say
often
once
use that
you
line.
crack? Would you say that once that you crack a little bit that shell, people want to start? It'll flow out. They'll give you
Yes.
even more information. Like sometimes they're just waiting for the opportunity for someone to listen.
Yeah. And it's remarkable, depending on the circumstances, whether it's a close up or whether it's a stage or something of that nature, that dictates a lot of that. Um, but I will ask them questions. For instance, this person, very special to you. I'm getting the feeling that it's a woman, someone who, are they still are they still with us? And regardless of the answer, I say, I thought so, but you miss them very much, don't you? And your connection to them is strong, and then I'll compliment them. You are a person that feels things strongly, and that is reflected in how you think about Aunt Edith.
Mhm.
And So they get a lot of credit
Yes.
for being able to think the thought so that others can feel it, um, as opposed to, again, to the master mentalist or the whatever. So it becomes less of a puzzle and more for someone to solve, and more of a description of an emotional moment between two people that this one person has shared with everyone. And I always thank them profusely. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of you with us. We are honored. And I mean that sincerely. When you have an audience member that comes up and shares something personal, you have an amazing ability and responsibility to do some really good things with that. Case in point, I was in a flying home from a gig, and the flight got canceled. So the airline, in a rare opportunity, a rare occurrence, put me up in a hotel, and there was a restaurant associated with it, and it was not quite seedy, but it wasn't 5 stars. And the diner associated with it was an interesting place. They served every kind of food under the sun, from Chinese to Persian to American to Mexican. So you know that they're probably not good at any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the server came up to me, and she was out of Central Casting, Stefan. She was this kind of a grizzled older woman. If she had been allowed to, she would have had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. But through her voice, I could tell was a heavy smoker. And through the conversation, because I was like only one of 3 people in the restaurant, she found out what I did, and she says, "Oh yeah, well, read my mind." I said, "Okay," and I did some things for her, and she actually sat down in the booth, on the seat in the booth across from me, and she did this. And she goes, I don't know if I appreciate that." I said, "Well, you gave me consent. You asked me specifically." She goes, "Yeah." She says, "We all have secrets." And I said, "Yes, that's why I always ask for consent." She goes, "Okay." And she said, "You treat that with respect." And she was giving me because
Oh,
I
yeah.
got it right. And so I always talk about consent and the responsibility that mentalists and magicians have when they work with the public, to treat the public with respect. Um, and there, I don't know how much time we've got, but I'll tell another story. I was at the Magic Castle, and not performing, but with my 2 great nieces and my wife. And there was a magician on stage, and he brings up a young woman, and he's going to borrow her ring. And I freely admit I had had a martini before going into the show, and he takes the ring and he looks at it and goes, "Oh, how nice! There's a place for a stone and everything." He was making fun of her engagement ring,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and she was very proud of it. And so I sort of loud whispered, "Fuck you."
Mm-hmm.
And because he just insulted her lovely ring.
Yes.
And my nieces turned to me, and I said, I'm sorry. The filters were a little bit off because I'd had a beverage." And he heard it and looked towards me, and he immediately changed his tone. And he says, "Oh, that's a beautiful ring. I'm sure you're very happy. Where's your fiance?" And so my point is that, we've seen magicians, so-called comedy magicians,
Mm.
who use the audience as the butt of their jokes. And and I think that's terrible. We have a responsibility to be respectful of our audience, unless we're Don Rickles and we know that it's an act. But this guy is working with the public, on stage, handling personal objects of theirs, and not respecting the person that's helping them. So
Right.
if there's a lesson out there for magicians, be mindful and be respectful of your audience, because such things are important. A simple little diamond ring was the world to this young lady. She was getting married, and she was excited, and she was very, very happy. So anyway, that's a whole sidebar that we could get into. I
I don't know, but
apologize for
it
going.
totally makes sense. And I couldn't agree more, But just out of curiosity, for someone, let's say, who is in the creative field and, they're struggling to have these eureka moments, would you say that over time, experience leads you to have more and more of these occasions?
Yes. And
It gets
so,
easier and easier?
yeah, it does become easier. So my advice is to just do it.
Yeah.
Learn a thing, learn a trick. See if you can put a bit of yourself into that routine, so that we learn a little bit about you, even if it's a persona that you put on,
Mhm.
with your tie. And this is not really me. I'm a magician, but tell us a little bit about yourself when you do the routine,
Mhm.
and people will appreciate it. They go, "Oh, okay, yeah, he's sort of like me, but he's magic," or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And you can make your connection with the audience much quicker. So just do it, but try initially just to tweak it so that it tells us a little bit about yourself.
And would you say that over time that you almost have a formula, maybe not bulletproof or foolproof, but that when you use these certain steps that you come up with an idea?
Yeah, yeah. And again, I draw from family stories, from my own experience, and then things that I've read in literature, again, poetry, or seen in a movie, to change it and to spark something. And but I always try to tell a little bit about myself when I'm performing.
Mhm.
When I do psychometry, the first lines that I use are to describe a pocket knife that my father gave me, and
Mhm.
how that I can feel his presence when I've got that knife in my hand.
Yeah.
That's not a lie,
No, no,
but that's how psychometry works.
definitely. Yeah.
So, and I try to always start my presentations with, I call it the cold opening.
Okay.
Um, and for instance, in this talk that I'm giving on leadership, I'm going to be using a pendulum to illustrate how you can lead people to a desired result. And my first lines is, my maternal grandfather was a witch, and that grabs their attention.
Yeah.
And I tell about my maternal grandfather, who taught me how to use a pendulum. And he was a water witch. He used it for dowsing. Um, and so that's a true story. But even if it wasn't, I would still use that to illustrate something about me and my history or something. But it is a true story. And I call that the cold opening,
Yeah.
just a declarative statement. So that is also part of my creative process, is to come up with my opening lines.
Yeah. Something that strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that, like, okay, so my grandfather was a
Yeah.
witch.
So it's
Okay,
attention grabbing.
where do I take it from there?
Hmm. Yeah, but excellent. So if we go to that, so exploration would be phase 4. You've already like touched a little bit on that, but to let's say recap that, of saying that you have no problem, you have your tribe, you bounce ideas off of them. How long could it take? Let's say, well, the longest you said maybe one was like you started it in 2017, and it seems to
Yes.
be that's fourth version. So that
Yeah.
would be like the longest one, the rolling one, you would say?
I would say, yeah. And primarily because it's something that I was really important to me to create this thing from beginning to end. Usually, it takes a few months for it all to get to where I want it to be, so that
Mhm.
I can actually start rehearsing in earnest this
Yeah.
particular idea. Um, and sometimes I will look at my note cards, or I will read an article that I wrote years ago that I forgot about.
Hmm.
I've got this backlog of stuff I've written, and look at it again, And this is from like 1980 something.
Mhm.
And oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then revisit it. So it could actually percolate for decades before I get back to it. But for the here and now, when I got my deadline, I've got all these things I want to do. But and also after a show, after a séance, after a talk, I will revisit it and say what worked, what didn't, and what needs to evolve. And I will either get a videotape or an audio tape of what happened for me to
Mhm.
review and listen to how many times I say
Yeah. Okay.
or
Yeah.
all that kind of thing.
Audio
That's just
pollution.
yeah, and that's just acting practice. But as far as creative ideas, I'll also say, well, it didn't sound like I wanted it to sound, so I'll work on it. But it might take months for when I first plant the seed for me to get something I can pick fruit from.
Because see, like if we end with phase five is implementation. So for you, it's not just enough to, I have the eureka thing, and then you have a path to go on. You have products, like you have things that you sell. But in the phase four, when do you know that it's ready to go to phase five?
It's something to feel in
Because you have to
here.
like put a yeah, like yeah,
Yeah, first of all, I have got a deadline, and also when I feel it here,
yeah.
that it says and does all the things I set out to do,
Hmm.
at least from my perspective at that moment. And after it's executed, then I might revisit it. And sometimes I'll just like, no, it's good. I'll work on my staging. I'll work on my blocking, or the look of the prop or something. But sometimes I do a card trick that's basically a cut deeper force with a longer story, and I've introduced cartomancy to it. I've been doing that same damn card trick for 30, 40 years and just tweak here and there. And I love it. And it just becomes part of me when I do it. And I really like the routine. It's magicians would say, oh, it's just a cut deeper force. No, it actually is a an experience for the audience, and it always has a great ending. There's a middle part that, when I mentioned before, I do cartomancy about when certain cards come up and talk about that, and so it's actually, it could be a 12-minute card trick,
Exactly,
but
yeah.
people like it.
But the effect is secondary to the experience.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I want them to experience something. I want them to experience some meaning. Do we get to the end point? I want them to learn some things about cards, and it's basically the storyline is creating chaos, creating order out of chaos, using touchstones from literature and legends and things, and then it goes into some cartomancy, and then we have a surprise ending in which the participant and I create order out of the chaos. And
And when
I think
you're
it's
like
a
in that development part, how far do you bring something in like the prototyping stage, like to the like how far do you want to like do certain things you want to bring them, let's say, to where the idea, like the germination of the idea is there so that you might find a manufacturer to bring it to like the finish line? Or do you want to bring your stuff to the finish line because you want to finish it it's for you first, and if
Yep.
it becomes something else, yeah, I'll share, but it's for me, so I want
It's
one.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
makes me happy.
Hmm.
Makes me happy. And I've begun to publish a few of my things. Um, and maybe when I'm dead and gone, people will find my notes and want to publish them some more. I don't care, but I will share as much as I can to colleagues along the way, because I want not the recognition, but I want perhaps what I have come up with has become the new seed for something that they're doing.
That's exactly what yeah, I tend to try to, because you have to have, I find at the end of the day, a reason for investing all this time and energy and money, and over time you stop counting, I think, because
Yeah.
Because if you put a limit on these things, sometimes you're kind of like constrained. But you could, like you said, you have a product. It's like it's over years, and you're adding the perfect little thing, and but it's hard. Like when you try to do it commercially, I find. So for me to turn off is that I try to do it for myself. So, but for step 5 implementation, let's say someone does want to take their thing and implement it commercially, or have someone else run with it. Do you have any like recommendations, or how have you? What's your experience in this? Like working with other companies?
I've worked primarily with Alakazam for the published material. It's mostly video, and then I've self-published um, my material and then lectured, and there would be a set of lecture notes. So there's that whole segment, and I try to give away as much as possible, every little single thought that I've had. But the implementation for performance is I am given enough opportunities to perform that keeps me fresh, put some money in my pocket. I have people that I can call and say, "Hey, I want to do a show. Can you book me in a couple of months?" Um, Country clubs, even libraries is a great place to try out material. Open mic nights, but I do like to get it out there eventually. But again, I'm fortunate that I don't have to put a roof over my head doing this. And we talk about the full-time performers, but they're constantly looking for the next gig. But I have that luxury of working it out and implementing it then when I feel ready. And sometimes I implement in this room just to myself. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. That's the thing. You seem to have multiple outlets for that. So it could be for you personally, just because it's something that you want to collect. You have your
yep,
show where, you could, but there's also like some products and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. And I find lectures are a great way
As well.
uh,
Yeah.
because you often get people who come to your lectures that have really good ideas, and I'll listen to them. Like, wow, that's great. And because I did a lot of training in my corporate work, and you're constantly interacting with people in your session, in your workshop,
Mhm.
and so you learn to listen, and you listen not to respond. You listen to consider.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
one of the things that I've learned as well.
But do you find, like, let's say if you think you have a venue in mind that's like in your area and everything, presenting yourself as a magician, sometimes it's a negative a little bit, because certain people will associate magic or like mind reading to something very gimmicky or like childlike. Or is there like a way that you would suggest? Like, I see you have a bit of a smirk there, like a way to go up to and say, I could bring this as entertainment, like legit. It's not cheesy. It's like, how would someone go about presenting themselves?
Well, I have a website, show them a video, um, and then I think the once you once you've booked it, um, your audience will immediately know if
Hmm.
she's a magician or not by the first 30 seconds of what you're saying, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it really does depend on the venue. It
Yeah.
really does. If it's a comedy club, I might do a very, very short set, and it's going to be quick, quick, quick. Still me. Um, I'm not a funny guy, but natural humor comes out, and I like to be the middling performer in a set like that as opposed to the closer. And but other venues are set up to have a variety of kinds of entertainment, from music of all kinds, from metal to folk, um, storytellers. If you can find a venue
Hmm.
that will hire or have a storytelling night, boy,
Yeah.
that's right up my freaking alley.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
you know.
Gonna stand out, because if
So
you add the magic to that, they're not expecting that.
yeah,
And you
because
won't
my
have
the
competition
stories I
either.
tell are
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and the magic I do. is a vehicle for me telling story.
Mhm.
That's very important to me, to have a story or a narrative, and not just a look what I can do. That's why I'm not good at uh, card manipulations, and I admire that. But I think it was Max Maven said that card manipulators are just, or sort of like jugglers,
Mhm,
which I
mhm.
love.
Yeah,
After 7 minutes, you're done.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, and that's not criticism. Um, I I admire their skill. I wish I could do it. Um, but I'm more compelled by magic that has some sort of foundational story or a narrative that I can deduce, even if it's a silent act. That makes me, excites me.
Yeah, well, see, for me, it was super exciting over the period of these 5 questions. We're just talking about stories, all the gems, all the insight, the information. I mean, I can't be more grateful for all the time that I was able to spend and you sharing with us and the listeners and everything. Let's say just before we come to an end, if there was, let's say, one like final piece of advice, what would you leave people with?
Read books that aren't magic books.
See, that is something that comes back. Is that's actually I was thinking about the podcasts, and over time a thread comes up. If you want to inspire magic, don't look towards magic.
No, read something that is a non-magical book to feed yourself. Um, Open up your eyes to the rest of the world. A lot of young magicians, especially, it's all about magic. It's all about method, and you have to understand how people live their lives, and you can do that even as a young person by reading books that are non-magical. Read poetry, listen to music that you don't like. For instance, I love metal music, I have to admit, and new wave music. I love rock, but I also have learned to love jazz and classical music. Listen to those. So open up, become a well-rounded person, and also travel as much as you humanly
Oh
can.
yeah, oh yeah.
That someone who travels begins to understand how people are alike, even if they
Definitely.
wear different clothes, eat funny food,
We
and
all
live
want
in
the
weird.
same thing.
We all want the same thing. We all want to be loved, and we want security,
Yeah.
and we want friends.
Well, we want to be
So
listened to, and that's where we come in as mentalists and mind readers. We're there to
yeah,
listen to them and highlight that
yeah,
experience. You know.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it was a wonderful experience, sir, and hope to keep in touch. It was
Stefan,
very,
we will.
very,
Well,
very.
I want to thank you for taking the time with me as I've rambled on now forever.
Oh, not at
And
all. It wasn't tricks. It was only treats.
but I feel honored and surprised that you would want to talk to me. So I appreciate it very much for allowing me to just babble on for quite some time now.
Well, now I know I'll be able to exchange more, even just on recipes. Now that we have more common threads.
Okay, okay, okay. Be good. Be much love is sent to you and to yours and to everybody listening.